U.S. citizen children of a person who's a foreigner, and they have children who have leukemia or getting cancer treatment here, children with autistic children, people who have children who are in their teens, who have grown up, lived here, and might really be harmed by a removal from the environment that they know. So
something where separation is going to demolish the family in some way.
In some way, but it's got to be pretty rough. I mean, clearly you're not going to win a cancellation case if someone's going back to Canada.
No. Okay. Let's talk for a minute, now that we've kind of gotten a little bit of the pitfalls out of the way. Let's talk for a minute about how we can fix this. That's kind of why you're here. That's why I asked you to come in. We have a system in our society at this point that, as you correctly pointed out, after 9/11 became far more harsh. And I know that you've thought a lot about this. You and I discussed this at length in your office. And you have some very interesting ideas as far as I'm concerned, and I'd love you to share them with the audience at this point, because some of your ideas, I think you had said to me, I think I can fix this problem for 100 years.
Right.
And I have yet to hear a 100-year solution to almost any problem that's not a mathematical one. So have at it, sir.
Okay. Well, 100-year fix is obviously an exaggeration, and only it's a dream.
I'm teasing you a little bit, but I want to hear the solution on camera, because this is fun.
No comparison, but Martin Luther King had a dream, and we're getting there gradually.
Okay.
But seriously, immigration is a most important and actually wonderful facet of American history. And
we're all immigrants,
right?
In some way.
We're all immigrants in some way.
With a few exceptions. With a few exceptions. There were people here before us.
And the Native Americans came at some point 12, 15,000, 20,000 years ago as well.
Was the INS in existence?
Probably not.
Okay.
And so the question of immigration is one that is ever present in American history. There's an ebb and flow of people being in favor of immigration and people being opposed, and even violently opposed to immigration. We have this history of tolerance and intolerance. We go back and forth. And immigration seems to be the key focus at many times when the political spectrum is flexing back to intolerance. It seems to be the immigrants are a target. It doesn't matter who they are. It's whatever group is last come in.
Well, is it economically dependent?
There's some I think there's some economics to it, and I think there's just some of it is politics. There's an ebb and flow in this country that is somewhat economically related, and I think that's the real key when I said economically related. Mm-hmm. Immigration is a combination of two things. It's a natural demographic tendency of human beings. We like to move. As a species, we like to move, and we like to improve ourselves. And we like to be healthy, and we like to take care of our kids. And so that's a natural tendency, and everybody's always looking for the greener pasture, all right? The U.S. continues to be a pretty green pasture. We've got problems, but it's a pretty green pasture compared to perhaps 60% of the world.
Okay.
So we're still an attractive place for many people. And so it's an economic attraction that has brought people here for many years. So immigration in reality is demographics, but it's economics. Mm-hmm. And I think the problem with the system has been that we view it as them versus us. We don't view it as how do we make us better.
Who's the us at this point? If we're all immigrants, and this is a serious question, right. I know it sounds a little bit bizarre, but if we're all immigrants, how do we aggregate into an us, and who do we define as the them if we're kind of really a melting pot? I'm still not clear on this, actually.
I mean, there's some question about whether that is, but you still have this tendency, and of course Rhode Island's a microcosm.
Oh dear.
And it's in a certain way, it's a good microcosm, because you always ask somebody, and it's very Rhode Island-ish, what are you? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the first question. Where are you from? What are you? And it may be your family came 3 generations ago, but everybody they're Jewish, they're Italian, I'm Irish, I'm German, I'm Liberian, I'm, whatever it may be. But we still have this tendency to be divided in groups, and yet the theory of melting pot exists.
Okay.
It certainly exists. But I think to fix immigration, to fix the system, what we have to be able to do, and the political leadership in this country has to take the risk to do, is to trying to educate the American people that immigration is an economic policy, and we have to make it an economic policy for our growth. And this is the perfect time to look at it in that process, because we still are hurting economically. So people are concerned about the economy more so now than they have been in years. I mean, this is the Great Recession.
Would different immigration policies implemented, let's say you and I could just snap our fingers and implement our immigration policies today, the Mr. Borts plan, how quickly do you think it would show results in the greater economy? In other words, would simply saying, okay, amnesty for everybody in that case, and you can hire anybody you want, go. How would that change the economic landscape, and how long would it take? How do we turn the ship around? And is immigration really the engine for that?
Well, I think it is, because first of all, demographics, which I was talking about before. We are a top-heavy society age-wise. We are old as a society and getting older. There is absolutely a future need for workers to take care of the elderly. We have this giant baby boom population, which is the largest group in the United States demographically. There are not in our population enough people to take care of them. So we will need and do need unskilled and skilled workers to take, first of all, to take care of the baby boom
physically
generation.
Take care of.
Literally.
Physically.
Literally.
Okay.
And then we need skilled workers and we need scientists to continue economic development in this country. So how do you fix it is as follows. First of all, we have this group of 10, 11, or 12 million undocumented. And even most of the Republican presidential candidates have acknowledged you can't just pick them all up and deport them, except for Mitt Romney, who feels that we can all self-deport. But you know, that's kind of like beaming up on Star Trek. But there's no question that something's got to be done with this group. But there also has to be the realization that the conservative part of our political base doesn't want any more immigration.
Put up the wall.
Well, we don't have to put up a wall. The question is, they don't want illegal immigration. And I don't think anybody in the best of thoughts wants people to come here without permission.
Okay.
So as humanitarians, of course, we've got to take care of the people that we have enticed to come here economically, who are of good moral character, who've been here for more than 3, 4, or 5 years. They've got to be taken care of. The kids have got to be taken care of. And what we also have to do is to create a system so that temporary unskilled workers and skilled workers in the future can be brought in by businesses for periods of time for businesses that need them. Biggest concern of large technical companies right now is they can't bring in enough highly skilled workers, and there aren't enough in the U.S. population to support high-tech companies.
And there's a time issue.
Right.
Except for first priority, employment-based immigration, there's also a time issue. It's something like, what is it, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months to get DOL certificate, Department of Labor certification?
Correct.
So even though you need somebody yesterday, if you needed somebody yesterday in February of 2012, it theoretically could be in January of 2013 before that person knocks on your door.
That's no way to do business.
No.
So immigration has got to function the way businesses do, because that's what it's about. It's economic. It's an economic process where we're bringing workers here, and we're bringing people here to serve our needs in a certain sense, if you look at it in a selfish sense, in the future.
How can we fix the government infrastructure to achieve those results?
Well, I think, first of all, you've got to take the importation of workers out of the hands of Homeland Security and put it where it probably belongs, in the department that best knows what our labor needs are, which is the Department of Labor. This was done 70 or 80 years ago, and it's probably the best place for it to be done now.
Okay.
In addition, and goes to the overall concept, one of the other ways that we have to, once we can fix this system, we've got to depoliticize some of the immigration process. And while
Is that possible to depoliticize it?
Well, you have to take the ebb and flow of this process out of the hands of Homeland Security, I believe. Some of it needs to go back to Justice.
Department of Justice.
Department of Justice, clearly, because the Department of Justice, while it's not a perfect entity at all, certainly has due process more in its mind, I believe, than the Department of Homeland Security does. And I think we also need to create a quasi-governmental agency to make proposals about the ebb and flow of workers in and out of the country and systemic change And, for lack of a better word, I'd call it, the immigration board or a federal immigration board.
Could one board handle that? I mean, one of the things that, in my view anyway, is kind of a real difficulty is this is a big country, no question about it. And we have, as you say, 10 or 11 million undocumenteds here currently, some of whom are doing well, as a matter of fact, some of whom maybe are not. Is it really feasible to have one entity, the federal government, appoint one board to oversee all of that? Or is it possible that maybe we could have regional offices that would simply oversee their region? I mean, from a systemic standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint of government, I'm just trying to get an idea of what the Borts plan would look like so that we can have an efficient system.
Well, the supply of money in the United States is regulated by our Federal Reserve Board. And while there are differences of opinion about who leads it, most people, except for Ron Paul, think it's a reasonable agency and has some value in terms of monitoring the supply of money. And it does have 10 boards of governors. It has 10 regions. The United States Circuit Courts of Appeals also has 10 regions. There are 10 circuits. There's not, that's true, there's 11, but that's right, there's now, that's right.
Because they split.
But there's not an unreasonable idea of dividing some of that authority, because regional growth is certainly an issue, and we certainly have more than one economy in the U.S. I don't see any problem with dividing some of that into a regional or sub-regional
with some at least guidelines for uniformity, I imagine.
Absolutely. Okay. And one of the other things that is crucial in this whole process is that is the fact that the language of business in the United States is also the English language. And I'm not an English firster, but I do know, and the research does show, that people who are literate in the English language do better in business. And it's clearly got to be the purpose of our immigration reform bill, as well as immigration processes in general, to provide incentives for the active learning of the English language as a business tool, and provide the tools for it. And that can be done by the federal government, not specifically, but in cooperation with local community colleges, land-grant colleges, local state universities, and to provide a more adult education for the undocumented who will become legalized over a course of a number of years.
To get them versed in English, to get them versed in the American way of doing things, you mean? Things
right,
like that?
Provide basically, one of the things we talked about in some research, we talked about providing and developing an office that we called civic transition.
No, we have about a minute left. There's one last thing I wanted to touch on. And when we were sitting the other day, you had what I considered to be radical but ingenious at the same time about perhaps diverting the attention away from our southern border in Arizona and Mexico and California, and making perhaps the Mexicans worry about immigration. Go, please.
Put it simple. We call it the border on the border proposal. It's very simple. The one way to build an effective border is called economics. Develop the Mexican economy. Bring the Mexican economy into the 21st century, and the immigration problem will stop at the southern border of Mexico. It will become Mexico's problem.
Because they'll get immigration from their south,
That's
from
correct.
Places like Nicaragua and Honduras and El Salvador.
This is all economics. People want to come here to work. You develop the Mexican economy, and people are going to stop coming except for vacations and to visit their relatives.
That would take more federal dollars. We do have to wind it right there. I actually hope you will come back. I would love to have you back. That's it for our show for tonight. Thank you.